When I started my business, I said, we're just not doing that. It's going to be a flat fee. I'll make sure I've got enough margin that I can keep the lights on, but I don't want I want to make it easy to make a decision. I don't want you to have to think, well, how many people can I afford to put into the learning management? Put them all in. We've got
Yes.
clients that have got 10,000 people. We've got clients that have got 57,000 people. Put them all in. It doesn't cost me anything. You can have as many accounts as you want. It just takes up bytes of space on the servers. It's no big deal. Put them all in. All of our storage is unlimited. You put as many videos as you want. I can add storage. Add 10 more gigabytes. It doesn't do anything. It's a drop in the bucket. So all of our storage is unlimited. All our bandwidth is unlimited. Everything that we do is a flat fee. You don't pay anything extra. You know exactly what you can budget for, and you get all of the benefits of having an LMS administrator, a course builder, your DevOps guys to help you host it, everything, and we'll take care of all the headache.
Fantastic.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is the CEO of Flagship LMS LLC, Christopher Dundy. So excited to have him on. We're going to learn more about the learning management system, but also his past experience and lessons from being an entrepreneur. Christopher, great to meet you. Thanks for coming on.
Chris, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Fantastic name, by the way. We always like to ask our entrepreneurs, tell us about your journey. What were you doing before that kind of led you into the journey you're on today?
I got out of the Marine Corps Christmas Eve 2002, and I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do when I grew up, so I went overseas, and I spent about 14 and a half years overseas working in Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon. I started out doing it just teaching English, and that was going to be a one-year gig just to figure out what I was going to be interested in doing. That kind of turned into the field that I was going to be spending the rest of my life in. And it was kind of an interesting thing. It was actually in the classroom teaching. I worked at some elementary and middle schools. I worked for a number of universities, but it was in 2007 that I discovered this thing called the learning management system. And at that time, this was a very new piece of technology. It hadn't been something that most schools have adopted or even heard of. And this was done by a company called Moodle, which is one of the largest open source learning management system in the world right now. It's incredibly popular, used all around the world by organizations large and small. The federal government in the U.S. uses it. Buckingham Palace uses it. So it's got quite a bit of uptake. But at the time, it was in its infancy. And when I played with this thing, and for those of your listeners who don't know what a learning management system is, it's a piece of software, and you've probably seen them when you go into HR, for example, and you sit down in front of a computer and they give you some workplace harassment training, or they give you some OSHA trainings. The software is not the training, but the software that the training sits on is the learning management system. And with this in a classroom, what you can do, and they're ubiquitous in every classroom these days, is you can have an instructor put their information online. And what they can do is those students can access that information from home. So they get able to watch an instructor giving a video lecture, or they can take an offline out-of-class quiz. There's lots of different things that they can do to be able to better improve the education and the knowledge retention that they're getting from the classroom. And when I saw this, the clouds parted and the sun shone down and the birds were chirping, because I absolutely fell in love with it. And from that point on, I tried to stay out of the classroom physically as much as possible, becoming an LMS administrator and going to these different companies in these different schools and helping their instructors adapt this technology to whatever subject they happen to be teaching. That's what I've been doing since. I've worked for a variety of different other LMS vendors until in 2017, I hung out my own shingle, and I haven't looked back.
Wow, that is an incredible journey. It sounds kind of similar to some other entrepreneurs where they get into something originally, but somehow life happens, opportunity finds a way, and then yourself find, okay, there's a passion, there's an expertise here. I can, earn some money and enjoy the work that I do by putting this together. And you're one of the original of LMS, like when it first came out, and then through the years as it's changed and evolved. And I'm sure COVID was a crazy time for you as people jumped to go online, and I'm sure LMS had some aspect to it as well.
COVID, obviously, a horrific thing and terrible for society as a whole, amazing for my business. And if we could do away with all the negative parts and just keep that aspect of it, it would be great, because you're right, it did force a lot of people to come online. A lot of organizations who had never previously considered giving training to their workforce or to their customers. Immediately had to spin and get something working. So clients, we had a good bit of business during that time. And with learning management systems, it's really changing from one platform to another is pretty difficult. And if you give decent customer service and your platform is stable, you tend to have the same customers for years on end, which works very well for us.
Wow, that is fantastic. And our topics today are, yes, LMS, but also just entrepreneurship in general. A lot of those lessons that we learn along the way. What are these lessons for early entrepreneurs? Because there's a lot of people out there who are thinking about starting a business. What are some of those lessons that you've learned that you can share with those who are struggling right now?
I'm the perfect person to do this because I have made literally every mistake that it is possible to make. I don't think there is a mistake out there I couldn't have made or didn't make. So one of the big ones was in the learning management system, the e-learning world, you can swing a dead cat and hit a learning management system. And so unfortunately, that means somebody who's going to be an LMS administrator in general, either a specialist in one particular platform or a generalist in a lot of different platforms. I chose the generalist route as a consultant and a contractor, and so I had experience with probably 8 or 9 different platforms, and I was pretty decent at them, not amazing at any one, but I was pretty good at all of them. And the problem is, if you're going to be a contractor, that's okay, because you've got your knowledge internalized and you're going from one job to another. But if you're going to start a business and something like this, you have to employ people with those specific skill sets. And the problem was, if you don't have work for those contractors, then they're going to be sitting around twiddling their thumbs. And of course, they've got bills to pay as well. So they're going to start looking for other work. And now eventually you don't have these people when you need them, when you get a client. And we were having lots of problems with trying to maintain proficiency in all of these different platforms. And I gutted it out it was a ridiculously long period of time, probably 2.5, maybe 3 years of just trying to keep money coming into the company by taking any work we could do. And so if you had a platform that needed help, we were here for you. And there was a book called The $100 Startup, and it was in that book where they were talking about specialization, the fact that you have to occupy a particular niche. And they said in there that the difficult part is you're going to have to turn down business in order to establish yourself in that niche. And that was the most painful thing in the world, because I had clients that would come back to me every couple of months. Hey, can you answer this question? Can you build this course? Can you do this? And I had to say to those clients, your checks have always cashed, but I can't take them anymore because we're not doing your platform. We're only going to specialize in this one specific platform, and you don't have it. And that was the scariest thing in the world. I didn't have another job. The other dumb thing that I did was quit my job and start the business. Don't ever do that. Keep another source of income if you can do it. But I'm not that bright, so I did. And now when you see I'm having to stretch to make these bills on my personal level. And by the way, payroll is going to be late by a couple of days this month. And how do I explain that to the contractors that I'm working with? It was really painful, but it pays off ultimately, because as you start to get your clients in that particular niche, you can, specialization allows you to cut down on the number of staff that you've got, because the 2 or 3 that you do have are very focused on what they do, and they do it very well. And you can focus also your marketing and other things on that specific group of people that want that specific platform. It was a hard lesson to learn. There was a lot of pain. 3 years, seems like nothing when you talk about it here, but when you're living it day to day and you're trying to make ends meet from day to day, it was really, that was rough. Don't do that.
That is a big struggle. But if there is any credibility here, at least with making all these mistakes, you're still able to come out ahead, right? You're overcoming these obstacles. Sure, it was, a lot of friction involved, and it was hard to get there, but you were able to overcome and do better things from it. Going from like a generalist into a specialization, what was that like? Choosing the platform and then finally getting through it? How long did that transition take? And what were some of the results and outcomes from that situation?
So the platform that we chose was the Moodle platform, the open source platform. And the primary reason for that was because it was the one that I had the most experience in. That was the one that I started working with in 2007. I was an LMS administrator for Al Faisal University in Riyadh. K through 12 in Lebanon. That's the platform that I used when I was the LMS administrator for the Peace Corps in Washington, D.C. So I had years with this one, and I felt very comfortable speaking to clients. I knew the strengths and weaknesses of that particular platform. And that also put me in a position where I could mentor the contractors who perhaps didn't have as much experience with it, but were still proficient enough that they could accomplish, 80% of the jobs that I needed them to do. So I can help them with the other 20. I did not have that degree of comfort with a lot of the other platforms that I've worked with. I was kind of in the middling level as well, and that just wasn't going to do well if you're in the company and you're the one that's going to be primarily responsible for getting either the work done or for supervising that the work gets done.
Absolutely. And obviously the pivot and the changes, led you on a better direction. It was, more lean and efficient. And then you started focusing on, okay, how do I find the right fit for what I offer? Because now it's more specialized. What was that process like? Now maybe you're doing different advertising campaigns, or you're doing outreach, or you're building on the relationships you already had. What was kind of that growth point for now finding that specialization?
Well, it was harder with the Moodle platform because it's open source. And maybe for those of your listeners who don't know, open source essentially means free for everybody. So you can go to the internet, you can download the Moodle bundle, you can unbundle it, and adding water, presto, there's your new learning management system. And anybody can have one, any company can have one, but it requires the knowledge to be able to set it up on your servers, to make it safe and secure, to harden it, to be able to get the settings, et cetera, correctly done and branded and all of those kinds of things. So it's quicker to hire somebody who knows what they're doing. And a lot of people with an open source platform like that will go to sites like Upwork, where they can find a couple of people that they can use for a couple of hours to solve a particular problem. And we actually found early on a lot of success there, because what people who had smaller organizations, maybe not a huge company, it was fairly large, but they did use a training platform for their employees, and they needed somebody to do some courses and do some debugging and things like that. Didn't need a full-time employee. But when they came to us and they found us and they worked with us for the few problems that they had, they discovered that, number one, having a partnership with an organization like mine actually makes your life a lot easier. And we work on a subscription model. You have unlimited access to us all month, every month, for a set fee. And that includes course building. That includes us being on your training calls and talking with your training team, brainstorming with you to make your platform more efficient and make to figure out what your best ROI is going to be from a particular course. So we can do all of those things in addition to the hosting as well. But that was kind of the first taste is free sort of thing. You work with us a little bit, we'll get you in the door. If you like what you're experiencing, then that tends to turn into longer term contracts. And that was kind
Yeah.
of how we did our initial growth.
And what a time saver for these businesses, because even for me, when I'm learning a new piece of software, there's so much involved, and the research to try to execute something, how much time and money I could save if I just consulted an expert and someone who works with the platform. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. How do I do that? And you would say, oh, well, maybe here's a quicker way to do it. So that expertise and knowledge comes in handy. And I assume you get that builds onto more referrals. You find what industry or niche you like working in. Is there like an ideal client for you where you find you work best with certain industries, or they're at a certain point in their business?
In terms of industries, no. Our platform is industry agnostic. We have clients in the education space, we have them in the manufacturing space, the healthcare space, and there's more. I'm sure I'd have to go through the list, but we can cover pretty much anything that you need in terms of getting training from your organization to your clients, to your employees, to somebody else. The clients that we find work or gain the most benefit from us are the clients that traditionally have a smaller training team, but those organizations don't necessarily have huge, robust training teams. And that's where we can really help out. We're kind of a training team in a box. And I argue this was a concept that we sort of stumbled on. We were we had our hosting platform. That was the first thing that we did. And in my mind, that was all we did. We were a hosting company for a learning management system, but we got a request from a client, hey, can you help us build this course? Or can you help us do this? And, we sort of, yeah, we can do that. We'll charge you a little bit for it. And we started to put those kinds of things together. And we figured, well, we can bundle this stuff and put it into a single package. They can pay one flat fee, but they have access to all of these different advantages and perks as part of this package. And what we found was that an organization who maybe normally would have an instructional designer who could put together one course a week, maybe if it were a particularly light course, now for the same amount of money or less could have an entire learning management system that was hosted by us so that they didn't have to deal with that in their internal IT infrastructure, but also they would have a learning management system administrator who can take care of all of those branding and adding courses and adding users, and also a whole battery of course designers. And we can do all of that because we specialize in a particular platform, and we can do it all for less than the cost that you would pay for a single instructional designer. You're going to pay an instructional designer $65,000 a year plus benefits. With us, you can host and have an LMS administrator and have 10 courses a month built, and we can do all of that for $50,000. And for a cost perspective, organizations that are kind of that level, it makes a lot more sense for them to be able to do it. Now, if you're a Microsoft, you've got plenty of your internal training team, and you don't need somebody like us necessarily, unless you're looking to make it leaner. But we can do it better, faster than most organizations who are kind of in that middle range.
And it's a brilliant strategy, and I think a lot of people can learn from this. Is that there was a special project from the client coming in. You said yes, we could handle that, but you realize, wow, there's tons of value if we were to put this together. Now you're creating more value within your product. This is something that can grow and scale with the service and just add more value. And other businesses should be looking to do this as well. Find ways you can provide these resources and beef up the training or just your services while offering, look at the problems that other people are having and then provide solutions for them. And it's brilliant that you were able to execute in that way.
Well, in the LMS industry, there's kind of three models for pricing. And I encountered this particularly when I was in the Peace Corps, working as their LMS administrator. One of the models for pricing is your standard per seat model. So if you've got 500 people accessing the learning management system, your price is this much. And if it's 1,000, it's this much. And quite frankly, it's a scam. And the reason is because the resources that 500 people or 1,000 people use are essentially the same resources, as you scale up. Adding server size takes nothing. Bandwidth is, in this day and age, it's nothing. And so the argument is, we're providing value to more people. And it just becomes a pain in the neck because it's prohibitive. Your 1,000 employees are not all accessing the learning management system all day, every day. They're accessing it sporadically whenever you're pushing new training, but you're still charging per month for that. Another model is the concurrency model, which is hits to the database per minute. And based on your level of usage, you would charge another fee as well. And that's typically an add-on. And I remember asking from the Peace Corps, I asked our vendor at the time, can you send me a breakdown of our charges for this month? Because they just don't look right. And I kid you not, it was a stack like this of all the formula and algorithms and everything else that they use to compute our price for that particular month. And when I started my business, I said, we're just not doing that. It's going to be a flat fee. I'll make sure I've got enough margin that I can keep the lights on, but I want to make it easy to make a decision. I don't want you to have to think, well, how many people can I afford to put into the learning management? Put them all in. We've got clients that have got 10,000 people. We've got clients that have got 57,000 people. It doesn't cost me anything. You can have as many accounts as you want. It just takes up bytes of space on the servers. It's no big deal. All of our storage is unlimited. You put as many videos as you want. I can add storage, add 10 more gigabytes. It doesn't do anything. It's a drop in the bucket. So all of our storage, all our bandwidth is unlimited. Everything that we do is a flat fee. You don't pay anything extra. You know exactly what you can budget for, and you get all of the benefits of having an LMS administrator, a course builder, DevOps guys, to help you host it, everything, and we'll take care of all the headache.
Fantastic. Now, where can people find you and connect with you online?
If you get an opportunity, I would love, if you're a listener, to come to flagshiplms.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's going to be a schedule button there to schedule a call with us. The call is 100% free, and I will not pitch you on the services. What I'm interested in hearing about is what kind of training problems you've got, what kind of situations you're facing, what are the pain points that are in your life. And if I can help you with any of those, I'd be happy to do it, even if it doesn't involve my particular platform. If it's somebody else's platform, maybe I can give you some advice advice or some experience or some wisdom. If you're a smaller company and you don't think you need a learning management system right now, there's lots of other ways, cost-effective ways that we can help you get your training to your employees. Really simple stuff. An iPhone is an amazing training tool in this day and age. I'd be happy to just sit and talk with you. But that's all we'll do is we'll just sit and talk and see if we can't solve some of your problems. And I just love to hear what's going on in your life.
That is wonderful. And we'll have those links available down in the show notes and the description so everyone can get connected here. Want to ask you more about your past mentors that maybe you want to give a shout out to, or if they taught you a lesson or provided you an opportunity that, got you to where you are today.
I tell you, especially for a beginning entrepreneur, I have never met the man. I count him as a mentor, but his name is Atul Gawande. He wrote a book called The Checklist Manifesto. And in my opinion, this is the absolute Bible for the way a new entrepreneur should be organizing their business. And essentially what happens, he was a surgeon. And he was noticing that in these hospitals that he would be working in and visiting, they would have a higher percentage of post-surgical complications. It could be infections, could be other things that were associated with the surgery. And his investigations into that were the results, was sort of the impetus for this book. What happened was he realized that a very simple act of introducing a checklist into something as complicated as a surgical procedure could vastly eliminate the problems that they were facing in those post-surgical complications, not only for the health of the patients, but also the inevitable ensuing legal complications for the hospital. Simple things like in your checklist, in the beginning of the surgery, count the number of sponges. At the end of the surgery, count the number of sponges. They should be equal. If they're not, investigate. But what he realized was that in long, complicated surgeries, people are tired, they've got their own personal things that they're dealing with, and they're having to stay focused. And the checklist allowed everybody on the team to be able to focus on the mission at hand and know what was next. And he took that example from airline pilots. No airline pilot is going to fly. They've got pre-flight checklists. They've got takeoff checklists, in-flight checklists, landing checklists, and at no time would they be expected to handle an emergency without the presence of a checklist. And those kinds of things take the inevitable chaos and confusion that is going to be associated with a horrible situation, and they can allow you to be able to focus on just one thing at a time and move through it. For us, this was enlightening because I think it was only about 4 years after we'd started the business when I read this book and I said, wow, this makes all the sense in the world. When we do a migration from one server to another, particularly if that server is under the control of the client and we're not familiar with its architecture, it becomes a pretty fraught process. And that checklist, that series of steps we have already honed with countless previous servers now does wonders for us, allowing us to be able to troubleshoot problems and conduct that migration safely. And it's a big deal because clients have lots of years sometimes invested in this training data and they need it whole and intact and move from point A to point B. And without a good checklist, maybe my designer or my DevOps guy, maybe he's got something going on at home that I don't know about. This allows him to be able to say, yeah, I missed something and I need to go back and take care of that. So the checklist is key. And we've got those for everything. Course building. We've got a 35-step checklist for building courses, migrating from server A to server B, setting up a learning management system, onboarding new employees, offboarding new employees, onboarding customers. Everything that we do is a checklist. And what that allows me to do as the owner is sleep at night because I know that all I have to do is choose good employees and hand them the checklist. And that checklist has been vetted again and again, and each of those steps has lots of detail and screenshots if necessary, so I know that they can walk through and everything is done the way that I need it to be done, the way that my company's reputation depends on it being done, and it took my stress level from way up here and just dropped it into the basement, and I've never looked back.
It's pulling off that entire mental load because now you have a process. Yeah. Okay, how do I explain this to someone? The clear next steps, and they can follow that with all the different things ourselves and employees are doing. Just the distractions. It's nice to go back to a checklist because our recollection, our memory can serve us wrong. It can steer us in the wrong direction. Having that checklist is something easy to follow. It's a process that anyone is supposed to be able to pick up, which is excellent. Christopher, wanted to ask, we only have one more minute, want to ask, what are you looking forward to most in 2026? Are you doing anything new products, new offerings? Are you trying something new? Or are you just kind of building and growing from what's been working?
No, I'm really excited. Actually, 2026 is going to be a good one for us. We are in the process right now of adding a layer of artificial intelligence across the top of our learning management system that is going to dramatically change the way that our clients interact with the platform itself, but also the way that they are able to both present information to their users and also able to get information on how those users are interacting with that training and how much they're able to retain that knowledge. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm really excited about it. And when that gets rolled out, that's going to be a game changer for us.
Oh, that is so exciting, because I know a lot of these tools, when they're used the right way, they can enhance your learning, just your comprehension of new things coming in. Because some people like to be hands-on learners. They have questions that, unless I have this answered, I can't further my education until I understand this concept. So that'll be an interesting layer. Make sure you email us as soon as that's implemented, because I want to hear all about that. But yeah, thank you again, Christopher, for coming on and joining us with all your tips and tricks. Thank you again, and we appreciate it.
It was very nice meeting you, Chris, and I hope your listeners get some value from it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.